Hello and welcome to this very special video. As promised last week, I am going to undertake a reading experiment. It is 8:15 on Tuesday morning and I've done a lot of preparation to get to this point. You will see I'm quite puffy in the face because I woke up at just before 5 this morning, which is very unusual for me, and I couldn't work out why I woke up. I was up for nearly an hour. And just as I was about to give up, I managed to fall back asleep again. But quite honestly, I think I woke up because I was excited. Because today, as I said last video, I am going to spend the whole day reading and see how long it takes me to read a book. So it's currently 8:15 in the morning. I am having a cup of tea in bed, very puffy face because I've not long been up, having had my disturbed night's sleep, and I have got a little pile here that you might just be able to see just off screen of 4 books that I have selected from my to be read stash that are contenders for the book that I'm going to read today. Now I do have a book on the go which I've spoken about before, which is my The Fourth Bear by Jasper Fforde, but I'm halfway through that, so I need this to be a clean experiment. So we're going to take a whole new book and go with that. So I'm going to first tell you about the 4 books that I have, why I have them and what they're about, and then I'm going to decide which one I'm going to read. So here are the 4 books. We have The Flatshare by Beth O'Leary, Perfect by Rachel Joyce, Sorrow and Bliss by Meg Mason, and The Girl on the Landing by Paul Torday. These represent different areas of my book stash. We've got one that is a charity shop find for 50p. One was a gift from my mum. One is brand new. I just bought it this week. And one is deep. Oh, what would we call that? If it was yarn, I'd call it deep stash. What do we call a book? Deep bookshelf. I've had it for years, at least 10 years. It was originally a gift from my mum and I've never read it for reasons I will explain. So number 1, we have The Flatshare by Beth O'Leary. I'll read you all the blurbs as well. Their friends think they're crazy, but it's the perfect solution. Leon occupies the 1-bed flat while Tiffy's at work in the day, and she has the run of the place the rest of the time. But with obsessive ex-boyfriends, wrongly imprisoned brothers, and, of course, the fact that they still haven't met yet, it seems this flat share is more complicated than expected. Sounds like a really interesting... I'm not going to find words very easily at this time in the morning when I've just woken up. Plot, that's the word I'm looking for. Good grief. Sounds like a really interesting plot. So it was the author Beth O'Leary's debut novel. It was published in 2020 and it's 432 pages. At the time it came out, it was nominated for the Comedy Women in Fiction Prize. I don't think it won it, but it was certainly nominated for it. And it's now been made into a television series, which is out on Paramount Plus as well. So I don't want to know anything about that until I've read the book. I want to read the book first. So I'm expecting from this one, from the blurb and the little bit I know about it, I'm expecting light, fluffy romance, feel-good stuff. I should also say that I bought this for 50p in a charity shop in my local town last week or the week before. And I was absolutely thrilled with that because it's brand new. I always have to show the spine if I've bought a second-hand book. Absolutely brand new. It's obviously never been read. 50p. This is like £9 in Waterstones. 50p. Okay, so my next book is my brand new book. I ordered this when I realised that I was officially a fan of the author. So I've spoken a lot before about the Rachel Joyce books that I've listened to on Audible. Namely, in order that I listened to them in, The Unlikely Pilgrimage of Harold Fry, The Love Song of Miss Queenie Hennessy, Maureen Fry and The Angel of the North, and Miss Benson's Beetle, all of which I adored and loved, and I thought the narration of them was wonderful. I now want to experience one of Rachel Joyce's book in my own voice, in my head. It's hard though, because I know that the narration of those 4 books that I've listened to brought those books and the characters to life for me in a way that I wouldn't have done in my own voice, in my own head. But I do want to experience one of her books by reading it as an actual book. So this is Perfect. It was published in 2014 and it is her 3rd book, Harold Fry being her 1st book. She's written 8 books in total, I think, and I've listened to 4 of them. It was published in 2014, so quite a long time ago now, and it is 448 pages. I'll read you the blurb. Summer 1972. In the claustrophobic heat, 11-year-old Byron and his friend begin Operation Perfect, a hapless mission to rescue Byron's mother from impending crisis. Winter, present day. As frost creeps across the moor, Jim cleans tables in the local cafe, a solitary figure struggling with OCD. His job is a relief from the rituals that govern his nights. Little would seem to connect them, but 2 seconds can change everything. And if your world can be shattered in an instant, can time also put it right? Sounds interesting, doesn't it? So with this one, from what I know of Rachel Joyce's books, I'm expecting it to be sort of medium paced, very emotional, probably a little bit of a journey element in there. Whether that be a physical journey, an emotional journey. It sounds a bit like a journey through time and life, doesn't it? Yeah, so I think it would be very emotional and beautiful as well. That's what I'd expect from this one. So next up, I have a book that was a gift. My mum always gets me a couple of books for Christmas and she normally hits the mark really, really well, even if they're books I've never heard of ever before and would never consider picking up, and this is one of those books. This is Sorrow and Bliss by Meg Mason. It's a really recent book. It was published in 2022. It is 368 pages, and from what I was looking at on the back, it seems that the main character in this book is actually a woman of about my age. So it's not, it's I think a woman in her 40s. I will read you the blurb. Everyone tells Martha Friel she is clever and beautiful, a brilliant writer who has been loved every day of her adult life by one man, her husband Patrick. So why is everything broken? Maybe Martha is just someone who finds it harder to be alive than most people, or maybe, as she has long believed, there is something wrong with her. Forced to return to her childhood home to live with her dysfunctional bohemian parents, but without the help of her devoted, foul-mouthed sister Ingrid, Martha has one last chance to find out whether her life is ever too broken to fix, or whether, maybe, by starting over, she will get to write a better ending for herself. From what I've looked at online, it covers some quite big topics like long-term mental illness and depression and that kind of thing. When it came out last year, it was shortlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction for 2022. I'm expecting this to be a very emotional read, but probably quite witty as well. Sounds really good, this one. Finally, we have my deep bookshelf book, The Girl on the Landing by Paul Torday. This is one, it was published in 2009, and I remember I had this on my bedside table in the old house for a while, and we've lived in this house now for 7 years. So I think I've had this for coming on 10 years at least, and never read it. And the reason I've never read it is whenever I started to read it, I always felt it was going to be a bit scary and that I wouldn't be able to sleep after reading it. Paul Torday was the author of Salmon Fishing in the Yemen, which I'm sure you've probably heard of because it was a huge hit when it came out, and it was also made into a film. Interestingly, he published Salmon Fishing in the Yemen when he was 60 years old. That was his first novel, and sadly he died of cancer 7 years later, at 67. And his family actually set up, after his death, they set up the Paul Torday Memorial Fund to celebrate authors publishing first novels from the age of 60 and above. and that's still going now, and I believe they are in the process of shortlisting for 2023 at the moment. So that's really interesting. I've never heard of that, and what a great thing to celebrate. Oh, I haven't read you the blurb. Let me read you the blurb. You think you know someone, but you never really do. Elizabeth has been married to Michael for 10 years. She's adjusted to a fairly monotonous routine with her wealthy, decent, but boring husband. Part of this routine involves occasional visits to Bain Koran. Oh my goodness, I have said that wrong. Let me see if I can show you. Can you see it here? Bain Koran. It's an Irish word. No, it's not. It's Scottish. Yes. So that place, the dark and gloomy house in a Scottish glen that Michael inherited from his parents. There are memories there that Michael will not share with her. But then, on a holiday in Ireland, Michael begins to change. It starts when he thinks he sees, in a picture, the figure of a girl on a landing. As he changes, life becomes so much more fun, and Elizabeth sees glimpses of a man she can fall in love with at last. But who or what is changing Michael? As Elizabeth finally gets to know her husband, she realises that their fragile happiness is threatened by his past, a past that seems as unsettling as Bain Karan itself. With apologies for my terrible pronunciation there. I'm expecting this to be quite dark, very gloomy, and a bit ghostly and scary. It's the shortest book of the pile at 320 pages. When I said last week that I was planning to do this to see how long it would take me to read a book, someone pointed out quite rightly that it really does depend on the type of book you're reading. So I wanted to choose 3 quite different books, because I might do this again to see if a more challenging book takes me longer or a more light and fluffy book takes me less time. Because that's a really good point. If it's a real page turner, something you might have to read on the beach or something like that, or you know, that's really grabbing your imagination, you're going to read that much more quickly than something that's a bit more heavy going. Sorry if I'm a bit snotty, by the way. So the question is, which one do I choose? So this is them in order of length, shortest to longest. I'm going to immediately take away the shortest and the longest, so that we've got the two sort of middle ground lengths in the middle. There's about 50 pages between these two, with Flatshare being slightly longer. Also, I've just finished an Audible book by Rachel Joyce. I don't think I can handle the emotion of it again so soon, and this book still scares the bejesus out of me, so we'll save that for another time. I think and not because it's shorter, I think I'm going to go for Sorrow and Bliss. I think it's going to be a slightly more interesting story. This is going to be a lovely read, I think. Oops, not if I read it upside down. And very light and fluffy. But I think this is going to have a bit more teeth to it, which I think will make for a bit more of an interesting day. So I'm going to make myself another cup of tea and get started. I should say as well that the preparation that has led up to today has been immense. I spent all day yesterday cleaning and tidying the house, so I had nothing to distract me or make me feel guilty about spending the whole day reading. I've done the laundry, I've done the shopping, I've done all the food preparation, everything. Both the girls are at school and college today. Nobody needs me. Dan is working. Nothing to feel guilty about, and I'm just going to move about the house reading. I will update you as I go. I am just having a little break to make myself and Dan a cup of tea. It is about 9:45 and I have been reading for about an hour. I've now got kind of dressed. I'm just in a scraggy old hoodie and my usual skinny jeans. And I'm going to move downstairs now to the sofa. I'm on page 46. Impressions so far. I've had to adapt to the writing style. It's quite an unusual sort of bits and pieces writing style. There are little clips of thoughts and situations that suddenly just pop up for seemingly no reason, but then as you keep reading you realise it does all kind of tie in. And I think it's also to do with her state of mind and what she's feeling is kind of like she's processing a lot of things. I'm just going to grab the milk. I've also had to Google a word already. Abnegation. Never heard of that. Not entirely sure I understand it, even having looked it up, to be honest. And also the characters made reference to the year she was born, which was 1977, which was the year I was born. So the main character, the protagonist, is exactly my age, which is rather nice. I've read a lot of books recently where the main character's either very much younger or quite a bit older, very much older. So it's nice to be reading a character my age. She made reference to wearing cycling shorts and an oversized Mickey Mouse sweatshirt in the 90s. Pretty sure I had that exact outfit. Oh, I was just bringing you your tea.
Oh, thank you.
You want to say hello to everybody?
Hello, everybody.
I've just noticed on the back of the book that there's one of these little, quotes from other authors. And it says, I was making a list of all the people I wanted to send it to until I realised I wanted to send it to everyone I know. And that is a quote from Anne Patchett. And I'm pretty sure Anne Patchett wrote a book that I loved, that I have up here on my bookshelf. Yes! Oh. There we go. Anne Patchett, and this book, I just moved the little clay ornament that Phoebe made years ago, is, move it a bit more, Bel Canto. It's about, from memory, I really love this story, which is why I've kept it, a hostage situation. The briefest explanation ever. That's another story. Year 6 art project by Lily. My watch has just told me off and said that I should have some time to stand up, but also I am really hungry. Turns out that sitting and reading all day is hungry work, so I'm going to come into the kitchen and make myself some lunch. Can you hear the cat? Where is she? Oh, you're there! She was at the back door. So I'm going to make myself, it's a really sort of cold grey day today. We've got sleet forecast for later, although it doesn't feel cold enough for that really. But it's a perfect day for cheese on toast, which I'm going to offset by eating a banana. I'll just update you on my reading whilst I am grating some cheese. It's now 10 to 12, or it was when I stopped reading. It's 5 to 12 now. And I'm up to page 152. So I'm just under halfway through. I think this book is about 370 pages. So I've got just under halfway through. I've had to Google 2 more things. At one point, one of the characters was step 9ing. Had to Google that. It's something to do with addiction recovery. And I also had to Google the word fecundity or fecundity. Fecundity, which means the ability to reproduce, have children. It's always good to learn some new to me words or expressions. I'm really enjoying it. I'm very absorbed in the story, and the characters are all really, really well formed. I feel like I shouldn't like the main character in a way, but I do. I really like the character of Peregrine. By the way, I will be giving no spoilers. Well, I shall try to avoid giving any sort of obvious spoilers as I talk, so you don't have to worry. The characters are great, and I'm really enjoying it. It's very, very, I won't say funny because it's such a serious subject. She's obviously suffering from what seems to me to be some kind of depression, or maybe bipolar, or I'm not sure. It's not actually expressly mentioned what she is suffering from, although what she's experiencing is detailed, it doesn't actually give a proper name to it. But yeah, loving it so far, but hungry work.
Do you want something to eat as well? Yes, we were ready. Cloud, you're in position. And Peggy. There you go.
It's 2:15 and I've been reading pretty much non-stop for the last 2 hours since I had lunch. And it's actually, yeah, that 2 hours has passed really quite quickly. But I'm beginning to realise that just sitting and reading all day makes you feel quite tired. Or maybe that's waking up at 5 AM and not being able to get back to sleep for another hour. The usual inhale of Lapsang Souchong. So I am up to page 250 something. So yeah, about 100 pages away from the end now. And I'm really, really enjoying it. They've actually given and not given a name to the mental illness that she's suffering from. She's finally got a diagnosis, but every time they mention it, it's just 2 lines. So they don't actually officially name what it is she's suffering from. I don't know enough about the type of thing she's suffering from, but to me it sounds like possibly could be something like schizophrenia. I don't know, I am guessing from a very uneducated place. But it's very interesting that they have whole bits of conversation about whatever it is she's suffering from, but they never actually name it. And also there is this way that she writes speaking in the text, where only some of it is actually in inverted commas and in speech marks, and part of it isn't. And it's almost as though part of what's being said is what you pick up in body language, even though it's something that's sort of consciously heard without actually being said. At first I couldn't understand why it was written like that and if it was maybe a typo, but then I realised it was actually part of the style of writing, and I've come over the course of today to really appreciate that. I think that's a very clever bit of it. I've also learnt another new word, which I've forgotten. Bifurcate. That's another new word I had to Google. It means to fork off in 2 different directions. I only got up to make my cup of tea. Someone's stolen my place. Oh, the tea's ready. Hello. It's 5 o'clock, and an hour ago at 4 o'clock I finished the full 347 pages of Sorrow and Bliss by Meg Mason. I've given myself an hour to decompress from it. I had to do a bit of dinner preparation for tonight. So I did that and kind of process the story and the characters, and I'll probably do that over the next few days if I finish a book. A good book, the characters seem to stay with me for a little while, and I like to process what's happened. I will say there's a little disclaimer at the end that says that the mental illness that's referred to is not a real mental illness. So although obviously she's suffering from a lot of very real symptoms, which could be attributed to many different things, it's not actually a specific mental illness that she has given that character of Martha. The characters were all brilliant. Such a good book for for fully developed characters, her family, her sister, her husband, the main character herself, and all of the peripheral characters. So the story, let's see if I can summarise the story for you. So it's about Martha, it's from her point of view, it's basically her writing the story. And she is suffering, and has been since her teenage years, from some kind of unexplained mental illness that seems to get worse as she gets older, especially as she keeps continually, I guess, getting misdiagnosed and misinformed, which is something I can relate to. When I was a teenager, I had physical problems which were continually misdiagnosed until I finally got my diagnosis of ulcerative colitis and was able to then find the proper treatment. So there's a little bit of what I could see in that situation I could really relate to, and the fact that, you know, we're the same age, and just different things that she was going through I found very, very relatable. And even though she was behaving in certain ways, there was a kind of understanding in the way she's written that she's behaving in this way because she's unwell. So she doesn't become unlikable, really. You're kind of rooting for her throughout the story. And I think ultimately, although it is about mental health, it's very much about her relationship with her family and her friends and the people around her, and the other people in her family and what they've experienced in terms of mental illness and other things in their lives as well. And that's really well written, and a really it makes it a really lovely, well-rounded story when everyone in the story sort of comes together and really feeds into what's happening to the main central character. So I really enjoyed it, very much so. And if you're looking for something to read that is covering quite a big topic but is very relatable and is very witty, there were several times in this that I properly laughed out loud at something she had said. She's a very funny writer. I don't know if I said this morning that this was her first book, because if I did, that's a lie. It's not her first book. It's her second book. Her first book was called You Be Mother, I think. So I may try and track that down from the library and read that too, because I did enjoy her style of writing. So I started reading this morning at about 10 to 9. And I finished at 4, but I had lunch and Phoebe came home from school and I made cups of tea and faffed about with cats and so on. So I think in total I probably read for about 6.5 hours over the course of today. So I think that 6.5 hours put together of solid reading got me through 347 pages. So that's pretty good. That's less time than I thought. I thought I'd still be reading right into the evening. And I do feel a certain amount of smugness about the fact that when I woke up this morning, I hadn't even started this book, and it's not even dinner time and I finished it. I have a whole new story inside of me that wasn't there this morning. And that's a pretty good feeling, although it feels so odd to dedicate a whole day to just sitting and reading. It's a very alien feeling, and I'm not sure it was something I totally enjoyed without sort of the excuse of being a bit sick or something, when really you don't have the energy to do anything else. It's a very difficult thing to just sit and read, or if you're on holiday, you know, and you're just sitting around reading and chatting and stuff. Very peculiar. I won't say I won't do it again. I thoroughly enjoyed it, but it did take a bit of preparation on my part, knowing the person I am, that I had to have the house in order to do it. So I didn't feel guilty about missing anything. So thank you so much for spending the day with me and reading, and I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you again in the next video. Don't forget to let me know what you're up to in the comments. I always love to hear from you, especially your book recommendations on what you're reading or listening to. Ooh, frog in my throat. And I will see you again very, very soon. Bye.